As you've probably already heard, our switches are going to make decisions based on MAC addressing information. And they're also going to learn and populate MAC address tables based on MAC addressing information. You see, our switches are extremely intelligent. Why? Because they have this capability to learn. And based on this learning process, they can then make very informed forwarding decisions. So let's start off by looking at a little example here. We are going to have PCA send out a broadcast frame. And this particular broadcast frame is going to everybody. So the source MAC address is PCA, but the destination MAC address of a broadcast frame is what? What is it? That's right. All Fs. F, 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 F. All Fs. That's the destination MAC address. So let's go ahead and send that out right now. That could be a DHCP discover message. It could be an ARP request. Some type of broadcast frame is being sent out. So the switch receives this broadcast frame. What does it do first and foremost? Well, the switch is going to educate itself. What does it want to know? It wants to know who this frame came from. So it's going to look at the source MAC address field. And based on the source MAC address field, it's going to populate its MAC address table. Look, it's empty right now. But watch what happens when it educates itself. It says PCA is reachable out port 1. How does it know that? Because it received a frame on port 1 and the source MAC address was PCA's MAC address. So that implies that PCA is reachable out port 1. That's how it learns. It's that simple. That's it. So every time a switch receives a frame, it looks at the source MAC address and then associates the source MAC address with the port it came in on. Now, in this scenario, our frame is what? It's a broadcast frame, meaning it's going to everybody. So what does a switch do with a broadcast frame? Well, a switch will take a broadcast frame and flood it out every single port except the port it came in on. Why is that? Well, remember, a broadcast frame is designed to go to everybody. The MAC address of a broadcast frame is FFFF, FFFF, FFFF in the destination field. So the switch looks at the destination field and says, oh, it's all Fs. I have to flood this out every single port except the port it came in on. All right. So let's say that this broadcast frame was an ARP request. An ARP request says, hey, I'm looking for the MAC address of the device that owns the IP address 10.1.10.7. So I need your MAC address because I want to send you some information. I want to send you a unicast frame. I can't do that if I don't have your MAC address. So I sent out my ARP request, and now I'm requesting your MAC address. So in this case, PCB is the device I want its MAC address of. So let's say PCB receives this ARP request and says, okay, I'm going to respond with an ARP reply. Every other device in the network doesn't care now about that ARP request because they don't own that IP address that I want the MAC address of. Only PCB does. So only PCB responds back. So that device responds back with a unicast frame. The unicast frame is sourced from PCB and destination, and the destination is PCA. So what's going to happen now when the switch receives this frame? The switch says, okay, so I just received a frame on port 3 from PCB. I'm going to educate myself and populate my MAC address table. Perfect. Great. It's following the rules exactly as it should. Then it looks at the destination MAC address and says, okay, it says PCA is the destination in this frame. Where does PCA live? Ooh, according to my MAC address table, PCA lives out port 1. So do I have to flood the frame out all ports except the port it came in on? No, that's what I do with broadcasts. This is a unicast frame with a specific source and specific destination. Do I know where the destination is? You bet I do. It says right there, port 1. Forward it directly out that interface now. Directly out that interface to PCA. So when the MAC address table is populated, our switches can make informed forwarding decisions. Very informed forwarding decisions. And that is what makes them so much better than hubs. Because a hub, no matter what, it had no capability of learning. MAC addresses, because they are physical layer devices, layer 1 devices, hubs. Whereas switches are layer 2 devices, they can learn MAC addresses. And as a result of learning the MAC addresses, they can appropriately forward, filter, or flood the frames as necessary. So this is the frame forwarding process. What do we do with unicast frames? Forward it directly out the port listed in the MAC address table. So look at the destination in the frame, compared to the MAC address table, forward it out based on the MAC address table. What do you do with the broadcast frame? Flood it out all ports except the port it came in on. And there's one last one I want to tell you about. What if when our switch received that frame, the switch is the destination's PCA. What if that was not in the MAC address table? So let's pretend MAC of PCA is not in the MAC address table. What does the switch do with a frame that is destined to a very specific device, but there's no entry in the table for it? What do you think it does? Do you think it drops the frame? That would be logical in some cases, right? No, not with our switches. Our switches, if they don't have an entry for the destination in the MAC address table, they are designed to flood the frame at all ports except the port it came in on. So switches aren't going to drop frames unless they're explicitly told to. So, but by design, broadcast frames are flooded at all ports except the port they came in on. Unicast frames that we have specific entry for in our MAC address table gets forwarded out that port exactly. A unicast frame that does not have an entry in the MAC address table, so the destination MAC address in the frame is not in our table, then we flooded out all ports except the port it came in on. Those are called unknown unicast frames. I don't know the destination MAC address. It's unknown. Flooded out all ports except the port it came in on. I want you to know those three. Very, very important to understand what the switch is going to do based on the types of frames that it receives.